Welcome to Midwest Mind Meld with your hosts, Josh and Jason.
All right, Josh, what's up, man?
Not much, man. How you doing?
Not too bad, Lex. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm peachy.
Just peachy, right?
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, I was kind of scrolling through Facebook earlier today. Well, actually over the last couple of days. I realized something. I don't know maybe if you guys have noticed it too, but we seem to be becoming a generation of movements. Everybody wants to try and solve a problem for maybe a problem that doesn't exist. But there's one movement out there that I feel like doesn't really have a platform anymore. And that's the feminist movement. How do you guys feel about that?
I definitely think there's still platforms for sure. I mean, it's definitely talked about a lot, especially in the internet world, but it's definitely not near as strong or has near the pull that it used to.
You think so?
Oh, I know so.
So, what do you know about the feminist movement?
Well, I know its early stages. It was started somewhere later 19th century. It was kind of a product of the Industrial Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not directly a product, but I noticed that that's when it popped up.
So, when I was doing some research, I was reading about why feminists, first of all, the term feminist didn't really become mainstream until the 1970s. It had been mentioned throughout history, but it wasn't mentioned as feminism or feminist. It was just more about equality for females.
It was like the suffrage movement.
Essentially, yes. The first time it was actually really mentioned in modern, what would have been the modern United States at the time was in 1942 in a film, Woman of the Year, and it was actually Katharine Hepburn that mentioned that actually used the term feminist, and actually the whole movie mentions the feminist movement. And so I think that was when the seed really got planted, but it didn't really grow in popularity till probably the 60s into the 70s.
And that's around the time Aaron Russo said that the Rockefellers started funding them.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the biggest thing, were you going to say something, Lex? No? Okay.
Yeah, we don't want to mansplain and talk over you.
Oh, you guys are fine.
No, but I know that when feminism first started, it was about equality for females. Everything from it campaigned for legal rights, bodily integrity, abortion rights, reproductive rights, which included things of like birth control, and similar things. Protection from domestic violence, which should always be a thing. Feminist movement should not have to have a movement for that. That should just be common knowledge.
Right.
Also from sexual harassment and rape, which, as we all know, is terrible and shouldn't exist either, but it does.
Yeah, but we live in a rape culture.
And then I think the biggest thing that they really pushed for was workplace equality.
Yeah.
Maternity leave, equal pay, things of that nature, and then obviously against misogyny. But I feel like a lot of those key factors that they used at that time to build the feminist movement campaign have been achieved.
Sure.
I mean, look, if you look at today's history, or not history, but if you just look at today, look how many female pioneers out there are just like leading the way for females to achieve great things.
No, I definitely think that it's definitely a different time, and I don't think it's near as prevalent. But what about you, Lex? What's your thoughts on feminism? Like, when did you first start learning about feminism?
I would have to say, like, more in your face type stuff would be obviously in the workplace. We have females that are obviously becoming leaders,
Mm-hmm.
and yet we still have other feminists or women shouting like, no, we're still not equal. And it's like, okay, well, take all these women CEOs, business owners. It's like we are in no way oppressed, but yet we still have these other women in the corner pretty much shouting from the rooftops, yes,
Mm-hmm.
we are.
Yeah.
So there's a real disconnect.
Yes.
A very big disconnect. For some women, they're out there living their best life. They are achieving great things. And then other women are on the ground level yelling from the cheap seats.
But I feel like those are also, and maybe this is a very misogynistic point of view to make, but I feel like those are the females that don't really want to work to achieve great things.
So what you're basically insinuating is that the feminist movement today could be a crutch for very lazy and
Yeah.
entitled women.
I guess that's a better way to put it.
Or,
I mean,
or very wimpy men as well.
yeah, I mean, I guess I can kind of see that, and I mean, the biggest, I guess the biggest thing that people are fighting for right now is the wage gap, and we all know that the wage gap does not exist.
No, it doesn't.
And a lot of people will say, well, yeah, it does, because a server makes $3 an hour. I'm like, yeah, but all servers make $3 an hour. If you all work in the same building, make $3 an hour. There's females that work at our job that make, well, for a starting, they make the same as anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they're in the shop working,
Right.
they make just as much as every man in there that started at the same time as they do.
Right.
Right.
How that argument's always put out is that a woman makes 77 cents to every dollar that a man makes for doing the exact same work. But they never take into account, they never explain that any further. Just like a lot of points. It's just, oh, a woman gets paid 77 cents to every dollar that I would make. But
Mhm.
it's never talked about, like, that's actually what they take in the long run. So you're looking at things like maternity leave, you're looking at things like overtime, you're looking at things like promotions. But they never talk about that because that would ruin the whole
argument.
Yeah, that would ruin the whole fear-mongering and, anger that they're trying to install in young women.
Yeah, and it's crazy, and like, there, like you said, there's these female CEOs out there that are running, billion-million-dollar companies, and it's like Josh said, today's feminism, if they're hardcore, I'm gonna say hardcore feminists, they're out there just lobbying just to use it as a crutch to say, you know what, I deserve this too. But really, you got to put the work in no matter where it is, But it's just it's crazy to think that they're still out there lobbying for things that they already got.
Right.
And it's almost a waste of time.
And they just want more. Now, one thing that me and Lexi, that we were talking earlier before the podcast about how it seems like, because feminism is a Western movement. You see it in Europe and you see it in the United States, but you don't really see it as much in like China, basically in the East, in India, the Middle East. You don't see it in too many places like that.
Yeah.
In places like that, there really is a very established historical patriarchy.
Yes.
But it seems like Western women, who are by far the most privileged women in the world, they seem to be very blind to their own privilege.
Yeah.
They're very quick to point out the white male privilege, but they're very blind to their own. And because of that, they come up very whiny.
Yeah.
And would you say that's pretty accurate, Lex?
Oh, definitely.
What's some examples that you've seen?
I don't know. Even just being like, I don't know, in the job market, let's just say, like, pretty much the way that I see it, a woman who's like a server, most likely, if she's good looking and she has like stuff laid out for her, she's gonna make a lot more tips than a male would. So it's like already you have that in your corner.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's just certain things that like women can like get out of, like speeding tickets is the common thing. It's like, yeah, women can get a lot, like they can get away with a lot more than men can. Exactly.
And so when they say the white man privilege or just that men have more privilege than females, that right there tells you that they don't.
No.
I mean,
No.
because I can't flirt with a cop and get out of a ticket. I'm just saying,
Right.
like, I could definitely flirt with him, but I might end up going to jail. I'm just saying it
If
doesn't.
I was a cop, you could.
I'm just saying it doesn't work like that. So many people are, and yeah, that's a very common one. And
they're just blind. It's basically being blind to your own privilege.
Yeah,
you
and-
don't think about things like that. And if you do, if a feminist were to talk about something like that, they would say, "Oh, that's just because she's looked at as a sex object." Well, you know what? Either way, I made more money, so look at me like a sex object.
exactly, it was funny. It was
Do what
like
you gotta do.
when I was in Springfield, the bar that me and all of my classmates that we frequented, there was one bar, it was Show Me's in Springfield, Illinois. If y'all ever go there, great service, great food, great beer. They always have great prices. Anyways, they don't sponsor us. I'm just throwing that out there. But we frequented that bar for about a month, and there wasn't one female server in there that wasn't attractive, and they made money. And like you said, they have that in their corner, because like, I'm sorry, I can't wear leggings and get good tips because I'm probably going to get sent home to change my pants.
You're gonna get your ass kicked in the parking lot.
Exactly. Like guys don't have that. So it's so really we in some job industries, men have to work harder than women do.
Yep.
And they forget that. they're blind to that. Like Josh says, they're blind to their own privilege. Based on your, like female bartenders make a lot more money than male bartenders do,
But they need it because of the pink tax.
Oh, okay, no.
Well, anyway, man, kind of moving on. I just kind of want to talk about the definition of feminism, because if you look at the dictionary definition of feminism,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot more pure and a lot more simplistic than what you actually see when you look at the actions of feminists. And so, are you familiar with the
No.
dictionary definition?
No,
Right?
I've never had any inclination to look that up.
What about you, Lex? Are you familiar with it?
Doesn't it say something where, I don't know, basically the equality for, like, legal rights and other, like, pretty much equality between the sexes is feminism.
That's a pretty good paraphrase, yeah. The definition that I wrote down is the theory of political, economical, and social equality of the sexes. That's the first definition. The second definition by Oxford is the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of the equality of the sexes. So, both those definitions, very simple, very pure, and this is what feminists like to hide behind when they're called out on their man-hating. Because when you call a feminist out on their man-hating, or when you start, basically criticizing their movement, they always go back to the dictionary definition. But, just because the dictionary says one thing doesn't mean that your actions are justified.
Yeah, absolutely.
One character I'd like to talk about is Valerie Solanas. Are you familiar with her, Jason?
I am not.
So she was a radical feminist, and she's famous for trying to assassinate Andy Warhol.
Okay.
Because he wouldn't produce something for her, but she's
Her play.
yeah, she had a play, and he didn't produce it for whatever reason, so she got mad and tried shooting him, but her aim was shitty, so she fucked that up. But she was very mentally ill, and she had a manifesto that she wrote, and it was called the Scum Manifesto, and it was basically just how men have fucked up the world and society, and it was up to women to try and
Fix it?
Yeah, fix it.
I wonder if that's where that complex from... You ever notice how females always want to fix the bad boy? I wonder if that's where that complex
No,
comes into play.
I think that complex is a motherly complex, and that is deeper in biology and much deeper in human history than this shit. This lady was a piece of shit, and she was very blatantly man-hating. The reason I bring her up is because feminists have kind of failed to denounce her. They kind of just pretend like she never existed. But there's a lot of feminists that share the same ideas that she has. And when you point this out, a lot of feminists will separate themselves from radical feminists like this. But you're harboring these people.
Mm-hmm.
These people are man-hating, and when they start spitting out their hate, you can't hide behind the definition of feminism.
Yeah.
It's a very stupid cover. Your cover's blown at that point.
Yeah. You're definitely not wrong.
Now, wasn't there a show you were just recently watching, Lex, and it had mention of Valerie Solanas?
Yeah, American Horror Story. Cult.
American Horror Story. A
Interesting.
very edgy show.
Right? I've never actually watched it, but...
You need to.
Yeah, I think they mentioned her in a very positive light, as if she was some type of hero.
Yeah.
And
Really?
to a radical feminist, she is. Just like Osama bin Laden is a hero to a radical Islamist.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
So, I mean, just because you really believe in something doesn't mean you're a good person by any means.
No, I mean, look at Hitler.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hitler was a very prime example of that.
And he's looked up to by neo-Nazis and white supremacists everywhere.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. It's very, very touch and go now with feminism, because you have people I've met females that are like pro female, it's the term I'm looking for, like not necessarily equality, but just like female empowerment, I guess.
Yeah.
But they're not extreme. And then you get people that are just like absolutely extreme about it, and you almost can't talk to these people.
No, you can't.
And it's I've ran into maybe one or two in my lifetime, and they're the kind of people I'm like, okay, I'm gonna walk away from you, because if not, I'm probably gonna go to jail for assault, because I can't stand them. It's everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but it kind of goes back to everybody trying to force you to believe the things that they believe. Like,
religion.
Yeah, like I don't need to believe everything that you guys are telling me. Like, stop trying to force your ways on me.
Patriarchy.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I didn't know this, but feminism was actually it's actually been broken up into 3 waves. And the first wave was actually started in the 19th century into the early 20th century, which Josh mentioned, the suffrage movement was a big part of the feminist movement, but it wasn't the feminist movement at the time. And then the second was the 1960s to the 70s when it became more mainstream. And then now the third wave extends from the 1990s to the present day, which is more of your and I kind of almost want to say that today's feminist movement is kind of broke up into 2 groups of people. The extremists and just not, the extremists and the radicals, and then just those people that kind of believe the concept of it, but aren't shoving it down everybody's throat because they believe that some of that's already been achieved.
Right. One thing is that most people believe in the idea of equality between the sexes, and they don't identify themselves as feminists. Now, what a lot of feminists will try to do is they'll say, if you believe in equality, then you are a feminist. And it's like, the idea of equality has been around. It predates feminism. It's not the first and it's not the last movement to promote equality, especially among the sexes. But they claim that they are. But and I've also seen them almost sound very entitled to women's gratefulness, like as if back in 2014 there was a movement started online. It was called Women Against Feminism, and it was basically just women holding up signs saying, I don't need feminism because this, that, or the other.
Yeah.
And a lot of feminists were like, well, these women wouldn't have this right or that right. So basically they were talking, you've heard people talk about like vets, like, you wouldn't be able to have that free speech if that vet, if our soldiers didn't die for you, on the battlefield.
Yeah.
You've heard people talk. Yeah. That's how these feminists were talking to these women. Like, oh, you don't even have you have this right because of us. And it's complete bullshit. Right, exactly. That's the kind of the face I made.
Yeah, like
what a fucking god complex.
It's people trying to get them to fall for their whatever movement they're trying to push.
They're trying to guilt them into it and shame them, of course.
and they're not falling for it. And that's that's the best part really is they're making themselves look like idiots trying to force this on somebody, and somebody's like, yeah, no, I'm not biting.
Not completely.
Yeah.
Have you ever had an instance like that? Anybody ever try to guilt you into any type of feminist idea?
I wouldn't really say guilt per se, but I have had other females saying like, well, these other men, like, they promote so quickly, but like, why can't we? And it's like, actually, if you really look at it, a lot of women get a lot of favors and are able to skip some steps along the way just because.
Why is it that you think these? Because I'm assuming this is a coworker at work.
Well, a few.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, why do you think they are just blind to that? They go right for anger, like as if I'm the victim here.
Yeah.
Or we're the victim here.
Maybe because no one ever gave them a second thought.
Right. But it seems so like right there. It's like one of your direct supervisors is a female, but you're just gonna disregard that.
But the thing is it kind of goes the same thing like with our job. There's entitled people, and they're not feminism. This kind of goes away from feminism for a moment. But there's guys that work my job that believe that they should make production lead pay because they run a table.
Right. Well,
that promotion has to be earned.
Right.
And that's the thing is so many people expect to just be. So many people just they want that handed to them, and they're not willing. They don't want to work for what they should work for, and that's the biggest thing is I feel like that's where when a female does not get the promotion she wanted, instead of being proactive, she's being reactive towards it.
Yep.
And that's where that extreme, like, well, I don't know why he got it, or whatever the case
right.
is.
But, in this case, this was a young woman basically looking at her job and wondering why there were so many, top-ranked males. But as it was pointed out to her, there is a lot of females who are top-ranked and actually skipped a lot of steps and didn't even go through the same steps that a lot of these guys have. But she just completely ignored that. It was like a newfound moment for her when this was pointed out to her.
Yeah.
And I find that interesting because I see that a lot.
Yeah.
But no, that's a good example.
Yeah. It's and it's kind of when was the last big feminist movement?
A lot of people would say it would be the March on Washington. You saw it in 2017 and 2018,
Okay, yeah.
and you saw it earlier this year.
Yep.
It seems like every year it keeps declining, like the numbers. It seemed to be really big in 2017, and then 2018, and this year they actually had some issues in their top ranks because there was one of their leaders that had made some anti-Semitic remarks. So there was a little bit of a divide. Yeah.
Interesting.
Right.
It's crazy how that happens.
Oh yeah. Well, one thing feminists always say is that if we had more female leaders, things would improve for society. If women were leaders, that exactly. And just recently there was a congresswoman who resigned because she had some compromising photo service.
Yep.
But that's not why she was forced to resign. She made it sound like she was getting bullied about her sexuality and that she was getting abused by her ex-husband. And she made it sound like it was Donald Trump's fault for the double standard. But in reality, she resigned because there was an investigation launched into her conduct for having sex with one of her campaign staffers and giving this campaign staffer money.
Yep.
Which is against all which is against, I think, the House rules.
Yep.
And it was funny.
And she was actually saying, sorry to interrupt you, but she was actually they were saying she was probably one of the top runners too.
Oh, she was definitely a big prospect.
Yeah.
But she just a year earlier, she was very quick to condemn Brett Kavanaugh based on a really loose claim.
Yeah, well,
God, that claim was.
Do we need to go back to the whole Kavanaugh situation, like?
No, but it was just, I find it ironic that a year before Katie Hill resigned. I'll say her name. Katie Hill resigned. She was, at Brett Kavanaugh. Oh yeah, this guy's a piece of shit. She was, but she was a hypocrite.
Yep.
So what this tells me is that you put more women in leadership powers, you're going to get a lot of the same results that you got from men. Because everybody knows, we can all think of, some male leader who was compromised by a sexual act that he pulled or some type of misconduct.
Shit, like Bill Clinton, man.
Exactly.
Like, it's the first one that comes to mind every time.
And in 2015 and 2016, back-to-back years, you had female leaders, one in Brazil and one in South Korea, impeached. Because one of them, I'm not sure what the Brazil one was for, but I know the South Korean one was due to embezzlement and misuse of funds and some other dishonest shit.
Yep. And I'm not saying that, and for the record, we're not saying anything bad about female leaders. It's just, they're not always the right way, the right route to go.
It's not a good idea just to try and vote somebody in
just because they're female.
Yeah, just based on their sex. You need to put them through the same test that you would expect from a male leader.
Like, so when I worked for Safeway, there was a big push to get females into management, like store management level. Mm-hmm. And actually, for about a year, we actually had a female district manager, and she was probably the hardest district manager to work for. Mm-hmm. She was a stickler for everything, and she was really good at her job. And it's just, there's females out there that are built for those kind of jobs, and there's some that just aren't. And unfortunately, we can't lobby for every female to hold a leadership position because not all females are leaders.
Well, and sometimes, as frustrating as it may be for a lot of you feminists, is that sometimes your best leaders happen to be males.
Yeah,
so sometimes they're white males.
Yeah,
you never know.
And it's not a racing. It's just
sometimes the best person for the job is your white male.
Yeah, and
there's a lot of white males, and there's a lot of males who have proven not to be good leaders.
Yeah,
when put in leadership positions.
Exactly, and that's one of those situations. But everybody wants to, like I said, we've become a generation of movements, and everybody wants to find something to stand up for. And feel included in something, and that's where a lot of these movements are coming from, and that's why the feminist movement has probably fired back up a lot more recently than it has in the past 15 years, we'll say, is because people want to feel included in something. They want to be able to stand up and say, well, I was a part of this.
Yeah, I disagree that it's fired up.
You think so?
I think social movements have, but they're kind of scattered. It's kind of like a mirror that's been dropped and it's just kind of broken everywhere.
Well, it's kind of like the BLM movement. You know, that was a really big thing. What, 4 years ago?
That was a huge thing, and now it's just completely irrelevant.
You don't even hear about it anymore.
Right.
You know, but I think that was a big.
Right now, it's climate change.
Yeah, it is climate change.
It's climate change.
It's about 16-year-old.
And the patriarchy is responsible for climate change.
Yeah.
It's just science.
Yeah, I mean, you know, because science doesn't have anything to do with it.
But that's the other thing. I want to talk about the religion, because viewers, Jason, my wife. You guys always hear about me talk about social movements like they're a religion.
Yep.
Because they are. The way people go about it's just like organized religion. It's just not as organized. That's the only difference. But the way that they try to manipulate people, they try and promise them a better future. The only thing that's different is they don't have an entity and they don't have an afterlife. It's all promised in this life and in future generations.
Yep.
But feminism is no less a religion than climate change, except it's just not as relevant anymore. But the patriarchy is the Satan of feminist movement. It is a faceless enemy that can be applied to anything, but yet they really have a hard time picking out like actual examples of the patriarchy. They can list a few, but a lot of it is just kind of hearsay. It's just kind of, look, this is the patriarchy at work, but it's like, yeah, but that's also like this, that, and other things as well. Yeah. It's not just the patriarchy.
Yeah.
But it's almost like a word that's used to like scare young women.
Yeah. It's fear mongering.
It is fear mongering.
Unfortunately. And that's kind of the shitty thing.
How have you heard patriarchy used?
Actually, I'm gonna be real with you. I have no idea what the fuck patriarchy means.
I don't. Honestly, I don't think a lot of feminists know what it means either. I think they know what it means.
Yeah. But
I believe they're getting the definition mixed up with another definition,
which tends to happen. Yeah. Words are hard.
It tends to happen. But I mentioned it earlier in the episode that the Rockefellers had a big part in the second wave feminism and funding them, and that's a claim that was made by Aaron Russo. I don't know how true it is. I've looked into it a lot, and there's some really good points, but there's no real concrete evidence. But the thing is, it makes a lot of sense.
So why don't you explain it?
So, in the second wave feminism, which would have been during the
60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Yep.
Feminism had a huge bump. I mean, obviously, this is after TV has been a thing, and they had a lot. They had a lot of rallies. They had a lot more members. Now was a huge organization, and still is a pretty big organization. Yeah. But you know what Now is, right? Have you ever heard of Now?
I've heard of
Either
it,
of you?
But you can jog my memory again.
Okay, so Now is it's an abbreviation. It is the National Organization for Women. And it was started in 1966. So
I should have figured that out. Like,
right.
We're talking about feminism. Come on.
But it's straight up American feminist, and it was started in 1966. So you're talking right at the early stages of second wave feminism.
Yeah.
Anyway, they run off donations, and when a political organization runs off donations, this leaves room for rich donors. George Soros. He's been accused of donating to a lot of these big. Organizations, and so Aaron Russo claims that one of the Rockefellers told him that they were the big donor for Now and the big donor for a lot of feminist movements, because their goal was to try and get more women out there working, get more taxpayers, get more consumers into the system.
Yeah.
Now, if that's true, which I think it's a good theory,
it's a really good theory.
Yeah, I just I think it's a great theory, but if it's true,
I really think we need to
wouldn't the Rockefellers be the patriarchy? I mean, wouldn't they? I mean, you're talking about one of the most richest and powerful, influential families throughout American history.
Yep. I think we need to get Ian in here to diagnose this one.
Ian or Aaron. But wouldn't you think that they're the patriarchy? Now, if your movement's taking payments from this rich and powerful white family, how are you fighting the patriarchy?
You're not.
No, you're in bed with them. You are the
Yeah.
patriarchy.
At that point, yeah.
You are the powers that be.
Yep, you're definitely not wrong.
Right.
And it's actually said throughout history that the Rockefellers have their hand in a lot of things,
Oh yeah.
a lot of movements, There's actually a conspiracy theory that says that the Rockefellers are actually behind 9/11. Now,
They
whether or
were
not
one of them, yeah.
not whether or not that's true, there's a really good video that's floating around YouTube. I tried to find it again to watch it, I couldn't find it.
I think y'all need to call Ian on that one.
But it definitely when you think about what all the Rockefellers have actually had their hand in. I mean, they have it in multiple cookie jars. I wouldn't put it past them to have some kind of influence in the feminist movement. But I mean, when you think of second wave feminism, you're talking the same time as Vietnam,
Yeah.
civil rights.
Yep.
There was so many things going on and Josh, we had talked about this prior, was that the feminist movement kind of piggybacked off of the civil rights movement.
Absolutely.
And so that probably gave them a huge bump as well.
Absolutely.
Going into the 70s, and it's kind of one of those things they didn't have really a good foundation to stand on.
Right.
And so they piggybacked off of anybody in any other movement they could to try and get their point across.
Anybody that was willing.
Exactly. So I definitely wouldn't put it, I mean, the theory is great. I would love to do some more digging into that and find out exactly how much that's actually true. But
oh yeah, that's completely true. One movement today that you're seeing them try to piggyback on, but a lot of feminists disagree with it, is the transgender movement.
yeah, which we'll cover in a whole nother.
Oh yeah, we're going to cover that. But it's kind of funny because the feminists that are still feminists and still, in organizations like NOW, they're kind of divided on transgender issues, because NOW as an organization is for transgender rights, but a lot of women don't like the idea of a man basically just telling the world that he's a woman and deciding that he's a woman, because they feel that their sex, that their gender is being it's being commercialized, or it's being trivialized,
Well, isn't that
because what
Yeah.
if Donald Trump came out tomorrow and just said, I am a woman and I am the first U.S. woman president? By the transgender movement, if he went through the hormones that he needed to go through, he could really come out and claim that.
Which in his next term he could get it accomplished.
Well, exactly. Exactly, Trump. If you do this, we want commission.
But but you're not wrong. It's a very
dicey subject, but it's just funny because today they don't really have a movement that they can really piggyback on.
No, and they don't, and that's funny.
They've ran out of stuff to bitch about.
They
Exactly.
have. I mean, it's funny. So they're very unorganized today.
Well, it was kind of like when Trump got elected, and he was what was the abortion thing? I forget now the name of it. The plan.
Well, what did it entail?
Providing contraceptive alternatives to other countries. Contraceptive funding.
I don't remember any of this.
Oh man, it was like 2 years ago. I had a friend in the army that literally went to a rally in Omaha about it, and I forget what it was called now, but basically what it was is Trump was trying to, he was either trying to regulate it or he was trying to get rid of it. But all it was what it did is it provided contraception and funding and research to foreign countries. So it wasn't the fact of anti-abortion, which is what the media made it seem like. It was the fact that he was trying to limit the amount of money we give other countries for contraception, which in a sense, I mean, we got problems in our own country,
Right.
and so many people, and it was funny because so many people got it twisted, but that was the last big thing I can think of that people were really it kind of, you remember the my body, my choice thing?
Right.
That's when that picked back up.
Yeah, well, obviously, as big as it was, as much media is out there, I don't even remember it, and I usually keep my head pretty high on these issues.
But it's like they're repeating the same thing, though.
Yeah, they regurgitate the same shit.
Right. Well, I mean, you look back at 1900s early. It's like, okay, they had a reason because, okay, you guys want to vote. That's fine. They were working towards that. The 60s, it was more like Roe v. Wade, abortion, stuff like that. But it's now it's what are you guys really bitching about?
Yeah, it's like wage gap and just reproductive
Petty.
rights. Yeah, it's really petty shit that's already been fought and won. But yeah, every little thing that comes out, they seem like it's like they make it sound like it's a nuclear bomb on women's rights because it's fear mongering, because fear gets people into action. And if you can scare young women into thinking that their rights are being bombarded by these white males, then it really is, and it's pretty funny the way that I see it. But ultimately, I don't think that feminism is really progressing our society the way that they say it is. One thing that I've talked about with Lex is the people that I've noticed truly benefit off feminism is really lazy and scumbag men that like to use women.
Yeah.
Well, to think about it, back in the day, a lot of men, they were the sole provider for their family, and that took a lot of pride. Now, you had a lot of issues. You had abusers. You had domestic violence. You had a lot of just shitty guys out there. You always have, and you always will.
Yep.
But nowadays, with women working, making their own money, and a lot of women still want to be in relationships, they get involved with a lot of these really scumbaggy guys, and these guys are able to take advantage of them, use resources, use them for housing. I mean, take money out of their purse, whatever, and treat these women like shit and leave these women heartbroken. I mean, I see a lot of that.
And then that's when they come back with their men ain't shit. And it's like, no, honey, the men you fuck with ain't shit.
Well, exactly.
Am I wrong?
Well, exactly. I mean, every now and then, a good woman just gets involved with a bad man for some reason. He wore a really good mask. But most of the time, it's like your friends, your family, they saw the red flags. They pointed out to you, and you chose not to listen.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's relationship shit, and we can get into that in a whole nother episode. But yeah, I've noticed that the ones who have truly benefited off feminism are lazy men.
Yes, you're not wrong.
Right.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the term that it's because it is bothering me now.
Just give up. You're not going to find it.
No, I just found it.
We're feeling a little left out here, Jason.
Sorry.
You and your virtual affair. What is this term? I'm curious now. I thought you said you found it.
Yeah, hold on. I'm reading.
No, he's reading. Only men can read because, it's the patriarchy. The one other thing, while he's still looking this up, is that I've noticed a lot of feminists, they're very blind to the contributions to society that men have made. A lot of women like to, especially feminists, they like to pretend like if a woman becomes a CEO of a corporation, this has broken the glass ceiling.
The gag rule. So it's called the gag rule.
I don't remember any of that.
So I'll read this real quick. What is the global gag rule? The global gag rule prohibits foreign non-governmental organizations who receive U.S. global health assistance from providing legal abortion services or referrals while also bearing advocacy for abortion law reform, even if it's done with non-governmental organizations own non-U.S. funds. So what President Trump was trying to do was he was trying to limit the amount of funding that was going to those countries to prevent those countries from having abortions.
I don't disagree with that. We need to take care of our own shit before we start.
And there was a big thing about that because nobody did their research into the gag rule, and I was like, okay, this was, and it bothered me because one of my fellow soldiers was like, I asked her, like, what are you marching for? Because I had no idea, and she was like, I can't even be friends with you now, and I was like, well, okay. So then I started doing some research and reading on it, and I was like, okay, so we're talking about the gag rule. And I looked up what the gag rule was, and I was like, this doesn't even affect us. It does because we're keeping the money in country. I said, but it's all about dealing with foreign policy. I'm like, this has nothing to do with us. I'm like, why are we marching for other countries? I'm like, we're helping them do this, and Trump's trying to prevent it from happening. But the funny thing about that is that in the 1920s, we as a society actually voted to legalize abortion, and it's because women wanted it legalized, and now we're at that point where now everybody wants to illegalize it, which
I disagree.
Which Well, I mean, was it Alabama that passed that law?
Yeah, they did.
What was that law again?
It was basically promising to
Prosecute
anybody, even up into including rape victims. It was a very aggressive anti-abortion law.
So yeah, because I know we talked about that in the rape or the abortion podcast episode too. So, but yeah, and that's the thing is females are not females, but feminists. Excuse me, but feminists are trying to find anything that they can latch onto to try and build a platform.
Right.
Because they know they don't have one anymore.
Right. But you got to understand, a lot of feminists like to paint the abortion debate, between team penis versus team vagina. So basically, they're making it sound like all women are for abortion and most men are against abortion. That's completely bullshit. There's more women on the pro-life side than I've seen men that are definitely more outspoken and at these protests.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a lot more men that I've seen on the pro. It's about half and half. There's about half women, half men on the pro-choice, because you got to think, like I was just talking about, scumbag men have benefited from feminists. Scumbag men want to have sex and not impregnate women or take care of a kid.
So here's an idea. Why don't we start promoting vasectomies? Just get it done.
They tried that. They already tried saying, well, if we're gonna do mandatory abortions, or not mandatory abortions, but if you're gonna outlaw abortions, then you need to get mandatory vasectomies. Yeah, that's a cute argument, but it's not a good one.
No, it's not a good one. But
it's not a good one at all.
Just throwing it out there.
Oh, but you're not the first and you're not the last one to throw that.
Oh
out
no,
there.
absolutely not.
But I don't think us as a society was ever. Most people back in the 20s were just ignorant to the subject.
Yeah.
I mean, getting an abortion, it was a thing, but it wasn't, as widespread as it is now. Nowadays, it's not that everybody wants it illegalized. It's just that there's always going to be a strong push against it.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it's a sad situation, but it's a situation that needs to be handled.
It'll probably never be 100% handled.
No, not at all. And I don't want to get too lost on the subject of abortion, because we've already discussed that.
Right.
I mean, we could go on for days about abortion and whether it's right or wrong, but.
And Lex, your opinion doesn't matter because patriarchy.
Oh, shut up.
Even though you got the only uterus in the room, but patriarchy.
How do you know I don't have a uterus?
You're right. I shouldn't assume your gender. And I shouldn't assume my own because, I'm not old enough to decide my own gender.
But it's.
What do you think, feminists? Are you pulling your hair out yet?
I have titanium balls. I don't know what y'all talking about.
No, fuck.
Was it a feminist protest where that nurse was running around, where they were blocking the street and the guy literally took their side?
That was a climate change.
Okay, that's even worse.
Right. I told you, climate change is what's in now. You ever seen Zoolander? Will Ferrell's character. Climate change. So hot right now. Feminism is like Derek Zoolander. It was once hot, but now it's out. It's all about Hansel.
It's definitely an interesting situation, but no, I 100%, man. Like I feel like the feminists, the entire feminist movement has lost every bit of momentum that it ever had.
Oh yeah. And now it's just scattered.
Yeah.
Just scattered. There's some female empowerment here, some female empowerment there, but it's really scattered. I think women have it really good in our society. I think us as men, we have it really good in the society. I think for the most part, most of us do.
Yep.
I mean, you're always going to find somebody that has more than you, or always going to find somebody that's more successful than you.
Yep.
But I think if you're really willing to get out there and do some work, you can go places. You may not be the top CEO, but you can do things. You'll never be poor if you're willing to work.
Exactly. And
you don't have any
I think
bills.
definitely as a society, for sure, right now, we're trying to bring more women into the workplace and give them the opportunity to be at a higher level and be.
Which is not a good idea.
Well,
explain that.
Yeah, explain that. I'm curious.
Well, because you put a female in a leader role, and honestly, some women, they can do the job. Mm-hmm. It's not that. Because some women, they are capable. I will give them that.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, women, I do not think should be leaders. And it's just a basis of, some biological factors. It's like we're very emotional creatures. Mm-hmm. We think emotionally first and not logically most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you put a woman in a leadership role, she's going to automatically be more emotional on a decision than actually, logical.
And I know
That
that the
makes sense.
military was that was a big thing with the military too, about putting females in combat roles.
Right.
And that's why it took so long for them to approve females into combat roles, because of the biological difference. And it wasn't a matter of they didn't think that the women could do it. It's just women think differently than men.
We'll take the PMS aspect of it. It's like, I'm sure you've dealt with that.
Oh yeah,
It's like, I know I have. It's like, you do not think logically as you normally would when you're even in that point. So
Exactly.
it's like, okay, well, if you have to make a major decision and you just happen to be like on your rag that day, it's like your decision making is going to be a little bit off.
yeah, you might decide that you're just gonna go kill everybody. Like,
Exactly.
Fuck it, like.
And
But what if they're on very strong birth control and they don't have a cycle like that?
well, hormones still mess with your brain though, don't they?
I don't know. Ask science.
They do.
Yeah, it's definitely. I can say it's definitely. You got a very good point. And like you said, there's some women that are that can hold that role. They really
Yes.
can. But, I feel like there's certain jobs that females just are not built for.
Right.
Yes.
And honestly, they're really, like, I'm gonna say that out of all the female managers I've ever worked with, they're probably some of the better managers. Because here's the thing, when I was in retail management, the female, yeah, the female managers were easier to talk to for the employees could find them easier to talk to. Because I know I had a store manager, didn't give a fuck. Like, he would literally pull, 16-year-old girls in, it's their first fucking job, and have them in tears. And it sucked because our store was all male managers. We didn't have a single female manager in that entire store. So I had to play that buffer between the store manager and the employees, because he didn't care. And that's one of those jobs where females play a more valuable role.
They flourish.
Exactly, because they're able to communicate better, and they're able to understand, and they have that empathy and that sympathy with that they can communicate. Because honestly, if it's somebody's first job, you shouldn't be yelling at them, especially if they're a 16-year-old high school kid. Come on, they're still learning.
Right.
And she was one of the best workers, and unfortunately she quit 2 days later. And I was like, and he didn't care. And honestly, it was one of those things. It's like, I saw that with, because when I actually went to that store, the store manager was a female. And she moved on, and we got him, and that was a huge, just big mess up. But that's definitely where, yeah, so that's definitely where females tend to flourish. Is when they get put in an opportunity to almost be that, have that maternal instinct.
Right. And there's some things that women can do almost across the board better than men.
Oh yeah.
And
Communicate.
I think as a society, we have no problem admitting that. There's just some things that women can do better than men. But as a society, I've noticed a lot of people have a problem with admitting that there are some things almost across the board that men can do better than women. And it's almost like they think that if they admit this, that they're being sexist. Could you think of a few things maybe men are almost not unanimously, there's nothing unanimous about any of this, but there's some things that men just do better than women.
Inventing.
Innovation, absolutely.
I'm not going to say innovation's a hit and miss.
How so?
Because I feel like, when it comes to innovation's all about creativity. Some of the best artists in the world are females.
Yeah, but the best are men.
I mean,
The best cooks, top level athletes are men. Why is it so wrong to admit that?
I'm not saying it's wrong to admit that, but you have to think of there's some really strong female athletes out there too.
There is, but when you look at top level males, those female athletes don't measure up.
So let's go back way in history.
See, you're already getting uncomfortable.
No, I'm not getting uncomfortable. We're gonna backtrack here a little bit.
Okay, let's backtrack.
So let's go back to the days of I don't want to say Neanderthals, because Neanderthals were retarded. They couldn't talk, but tribes. Let's go back to the Native American tribes.
Right.
What was the female's sole job?
To provide a home, raise the children.
Yeah.
What was the men's job?
To go
Hunt and gather.
And
But why is that?
Exactly. Why is that? Because the men.
No.
Oh, hold on. Yeah, hold on.
Feminist theory says this was a social construct and nothing more.
So
If us as a society would have decided that women were to go hunt and men were to have the children, it would have been different.
No.
And we can change that now in 2019.
no, hold on. And I'll move on to that in a totally different. It's gonna sound weird, but the men in going through. If you look at and we talked about this before, you and me, Josh. Even in the Roman era, it was all men that fought.
Right.
The wives and the women were always at home taking care of the house, raising the kids so that the kids could eventually go and fight.
Right.
Now, let's flip-flop that. We're going to talk about lions. And it's kind of weird because it doesn't really play in a human role. But in the world of lions, I like
the females hunt.
The females do the hunting. Why? Because what is the male's job? To stay at home and protect the pride.
Right.
That's what their job is.
Mhm.
So it's interesting to see how biology flip-flops things to benefit
Sure.
the community.
Sure. But yeah, when you look at a male lion and a lioness, who's quicker, stronger, and faster?
The male,
Yeah,
and
the male.
that's why. But when you look at history for human beings, the men were always the ones that went out and gathered the food, and it was just it's always been that way. Excuse me.
No, well, women also farmed, and there were
Well,
some.
and
There were some
exactly.
tribes where women hunted too.
Well, and I'm saying, but
I
a
mean-
majority of them were men, and it's because that maternal like, I'm not gonna lie, I can't breastfeed a kid.
Right.
Like, nowadays there's probably some men that could do it,
I think there's laws against that, Jason.
but what I'm saying is at the end of the day, like, that's the mom's role. Take care of the children, take care of the family.
Right. Feminism
And-
wants to break that
And why?
because it's a social construct, and they think that it takes away women's independence.
It doesn't. It
No,
makes them
of course
strong.
It makes society stronger as a whole, but they disagree with that. But to me, it's complete nonsense.
No, it's absolute nonsense.
But I mean,
like,
getting back to that, I mean, why is it that feminists have such a hard time trying to, or just even people, they don't even have to be feminists, to just admit that men are better at some things than women. I mean, maybe not as a whole, maybe not just individually, but top level athletes
It's
is
kind of-
always going to go to men.
it's that natural human instinct that you don't want to admit defeat.
Right.
Like, nobody wants to admit that they've been defeated, and unfortunately,
So you're just saying it's ego.
absolutely, 100%.
It's ego. But if you look at a lot of feminist theory, it only talks about the male ego, but it never mentions the female ego.
And I'm sorry, I've met some females with a pretty big fucking.
Oh
ego.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And
I
it's
had-
very
I-
fragile.
I had one in my unit. It was always a contest of whose dick was bigger, and I was like, oh my
Whose
god.
clit was bigger?
One of the two, and I couldn't handle it. But the thing is we're in that point in society now where everybody wants to challenge everything, and unfortunately the feminist movement is going to be.
Yeah.
It's just it's not going to end, and unfortunately, it's just something we're going to have to deal with.
No, it's not going to end. But the thing is, I'm glad to see it's losing relevancy, that it's losing its kick. What do you think, Lexi?
I think some of the treatment from men, I think women bring it on themselves, actually. Some
Well,
things.
what do you mean by that?
Like, most women, they think, oh, I'm being looked at as a sex object. And it's like, well, for one, look at how you're carrying yourself. Look at how you're dressing.
Yep.
It's like, even as a woman, it's like some of the things I think we do bring on ourselves.
Wait, are you advocating for personal responsibility?
Yeah.
How dare you?
I know.
A woman should be able to dress however she wants, and men should just respect that in a perfect world. Now, in reality, we all know this isn't how this plays out.
Unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world. And
No,
that's what
we
people
don't,
need
and we
to
never
remember.
will.
Yeah, exactly.
But like I said, these religions, these climate change religions, these feminist religions, these social religions, they're promising people that one day we could live in a world like that.
Yeah.
We've come so far at this point. We were just talking 100 years ago, things were different for women.
Well, yeah.
Why couldn't we advance 100 years more?
Because we're not 100 years in the future.
Well, because we kind of see. Here's what it comes down to. I think feminists had, like equality has been achieved. But I don't think equality looks as nice as what it looked like 100 years ago.
Oh.
I think 100 years ago they thought equality was going to be this great thing. We're going to finally be treated like men. And now that they finally are, I think they're like, holy shit, this sucks. Female suicide has it's gone up significantly.
Yep.
Even in the last 20 years.
Yep. I think also part of that tends to deal with the fact that there's such a high social standard that females have to uphold this certain persona, this certain image, and when they can't achieve that, it kills them. Not literally, but emotionally. And
it could kill them literally, though.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
It could drive them to suicide. So
women are using drugs more. They are dying of overdose more. They're killing themselves more.
Yep.
They say almost half of the women are on some type of medication for mental, for basically mental, depression, bipolar, something.
Yep, I believe it.
I don't know. What do you think, Lex?
Mm-hmm.
You're the token woman, so what do you think?
I don't want to be the token woman.
Well, too bad. Patriarchy.
So, I think that's gonna be it for tonight, guys. Definitely a good discussion. Lex, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you
It's
so
good
much.
to have a female opinion in here.
Yeah, by the way, she broke the glass ceiling. She is the first female guest on Midwest Mind Meld.
Yes. So, for all you guys watching, definitely subscribe, hit the like button, tell your friends about us.